Good morning. It is early morning here. And I want to try to talk about work out, unpack something like Christianity and non-duality. Christianity versus non-duality, maybe. Something like that. So I just got hit with a tsunami of trials. I went through this long process of getting a new car, new to me and newer than what I had because the old car was not reliable. It was breaking down and it was old. And I was working at this job doing, that I was not particularly, that was causing some challenges for me. That was stressful. I started to have some liver issues. Anyways, it felt like what was not healthy for me to continue to stay there. And so I had this idea that I was going to get this car. It would be newer. It'd be new enough that I could start doing Uber and make more money. And hopefully be in a healthier environment, that it would be me choosing when to drive, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't have a boss or what am I trying to say here? Coworkers with no work ethic, or there was just a lot of stuff that was making it hard to stay at the other place. And this seemed like a move in the right direction. Anyways, I ended up getting the vehicle. It was a incredibly stressful month or so process. And man, just everything about this life has been very frustrating. I'm going to sound like a dark cloud here, but I'm just going to express it how I feel it. Disappointing, frustrating, anger-inducing. It's just like you keep hitting obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And I'm not somebody who thinks life should be obstacle-free. I mean, I just wouldn't even allow myself that luxury of contemplating something like that, because it's just not that, life just is not that way. But just it's like there's a threshold of how much bullshit you can handle at any time and process, and I just have been maxed out for so long. But having to keep pushing because of financial reasons, and it's just unrelenting life sometimes on this planet. Anyways, and so, yeah, I finally got things basically set up and started doing it. And I was basically right about the money part, making more money. Anyways, there's a lot more I could say about all of that, but rodents got into the new car and ate up a bunch of the wiring. This is actually the second time this has happened to now 2 different cars for me at the place I'm at. And so that in and of itself is created some friction and having to now figure out, do I need to find another place to live? What precautions? Anyways, I mean, just opens up this vast horizon of all kinds of uncertainty and stress. It took a literal full day, like from the morning when I figured out something was wrong with the car, went to O'Reilly's, got the engine code. It can, there's the OBDII, OBD2, OBDII. It's like a handheld diagnostic tool that you can plug into the car. Went and got that readout. And see, through the place that I bought the car, CarMax, I've got an extended warranty which covers many mechanical failures and electric failures. And it was coming back that this was an electrical issue. And so I talked to the extended warranty people and figured out what I needed to do, found a place. See, one of the challenges is if you're doing rideshare, your vehicle is your work, and it's not like a rental vehicle unless you go through Uber, and that's a whole process, and I think could be pretty expensive. I don't know. But a rental, and I don't even know that it's available here. And I didn't even try to go down that route. But I mean, you don't know at the point of interface when you're taking your vehicle in what the extent of what's wrong with. I didn't even know that it was rodent damage at that point. Thought maybe a wire or a sensor or something had. I was thinking that a sensor had broken, and that happens sometimes based on what the O'Reilly's thing was saying. I mean, those readouts give you, they kind of hone in on an area, but they don't necessarily know exactly what's wrong. They can't tell you exactly what's wrong. Anyways, so I found a place to take it. The other thing is this, it always happens least convenient time, right? This is Friday, and it's like last minute. Couldn't find shops that could get me in. Some of them were like 25 days out. It's like, that ain't gonna happen. But I went through my Max Care through CarMax, extended warranty. There's a list of approved places. Went on their website, booked a place that was available today, or same day, like just an hour later, and tried to. At that point, I hadn't even. See, with the Max Care, you have to wait till they get the diagnostic. If it's covered, if it's a repair that's covered by Max Care, then they'll retroactively cover the diagnostic. Well, I guess you wouldn't have even paid at that point. They'll cover the diagnostic and the repair. If it's not, you have to foot the bill on the diagnostic. Those are not cheap. And then I'm having to take Ubers across town to get to this place. It's like it just starts to add up real quick, and money is an issue for me. So that's majorly stressful. The guys there are total dickheads. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was me. Maybe it's because I was so stressed out. But at a minimum, I can say they weren't going out of their way to be kind. So I kind of get into it with them a little bit, saying, hey, you guys need to be respectful. I don't appreciate the attitude. I don't appreciate the tone. Kind of getting into it a little bit. And yeah, so they determined that it's rodent damage. It's not covered by my extended warranty. It is, knock on wood, hopefully, going to be covered by my other insurance, my auto policy, my auto insurance policy through State Farm. But now they have a whole set of criteria, and they have their own shops that it needs to be at in order for. I could leave it at the place that it's at, but it's going to take days for their adjuster to come out. And if the adjuster approves it, sometime next week, then they start to do the repair, and they find they need to modify the claim, modify the repair work or the quote or whatever. then it's another 3 to 5 business days for the adjuster to come out just to approve the modification, and each subsequent modification, it's that way. So there's so many decisions you have to just make based on hypotheticals, and that's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly difficult to do when you're stressed out, when you deal with indecisiveness, which is something I struggle with, OCD, etc. So I'm burnt out already trying to figure all this out. It's like 25 phone calls talking to all the wrong people before you finally, or modern era, you know, 25 robots before you finally find an actual live person. Anyways, some helpful people, some people that are just being dicks, and I'm so maxed out. I'm just calling it out, and so I'm getting into arguments with people on the phone. Maybe I should not have been. Forgive me, Lord, for any mistakes there. But so I we finally, after probably literally hours, at least an hour, I'm thinking probably more of phone calls, trying to coordinate and figure out all the ins and outs, and they've got all this stipulations, and it's like it's complicated. I get by this time it's closing in on 5 o'clock in the afternoon, actually, just to give you a sense of this whole process. It started probably around 8, or no, actually earlier than 8 when I woke up. Yeah, I was actually trying to get out on the road to work, I think around 6 or 7. But anyways, it's closing in on 5 now. The car is at the wrong mechanic. Wires are eaten up. Still have not found where I'm going to take it. Finally find a place. Now I have to Uber out. I have to pay the diagnostic fee, which ends out being about $200. $200 excuse my language. Totally unpleasant experience. And pray that I can drive the car over to this new mechanic. Now, I guess I could have opted for a tow truck, but at this point, trying to coordinate all of that, I'm thinking, I don't know that this tow truck's going to be gentle with this car. I don't want to be in this situation where I get the car back and there's a bunch of new scratches, and I'm going to feel like I need to pursue that. And I just said, you know what, I drove it there, it made it there, and let me try to drive it. So I Uber out or Lyft out, another expense out of pocket. And I drive it across town. That's a whole ordeal. It's the actual place it needs to go is there's a company that owns a bunch of car places, like shops and deal. It's like a dealership. They've got shops, and it's like this kind of sprawling network of buildings situated on either side of a major intersection. And I go to the wrong place a couple of times before I finally find the right place. Now, when I get there, they are actually, for the first time, some kind people, which is a breath of fresh air. At least one lady that helped me, kind person, straight to the point. So I get the car checked in, and they're taking the car, even though I still don't know when they're going to be able to get to the car. That's a whole nother thing. It's sort of a mixed blessing the way I'm seeing it. Maybe I'll come back to that, but they're at least going to allow me to check in, leave the vehicle there, and get a rental, which will be nice, because otherwise I would have had to, I guess, house the car where I live, not have reliable transportation, because it doesn't make sense for me to keep trying to drive this car when I'm not sure the extent of the damage. So I would be Ubering everywhere. Anyways, I would be stuck at home basically, or trying to Uber everywhere, which I guess State Farm would have, I don't know. Anyways, I think they would have covered, they said they would cover. But anyways, it just, to me, it made more sense to find a place that would allow me to just drop it off, and then they'll get to it. And I don't know, because this was a Friday, so hopefully I'll hear soon when they're even going to start to look at it. much less to repair it. But yeah, and the rental place was there, basically connected to it's actually like a collision shop, but I guess they do mechanical repair. And I got a rental, and it's a Mustang. I mean, it's kind of a cool rental, cool car. That in and of itself presents some issues. It's like I'm going to be taking the car back to the place where the damage from the rodents happened, and now if damage from rodents happens on this rental car, that's going to be a fucking nightmare. I've got full coverage, but and I called my insurance to talk to them about this issue. Like, do I need to be paying additional money out of pocket every day? It's like $30 every day, which at this point I'm not able to continue working, and I don't have a lot of money, and so $30 additional every day, and I don't know how many days this is going to be. I mean, there's just 20,000 different complications, and I'm at my fucking wit's end with all of this. Was already at my wit's end before this happened. Just been dealing with nonstop hardship, difficulty for a long time. Welcome to planet Earth, right? But anyway, so I bought a bunch of like rodents, I bought some repellent and traps and different things, and praying to God, your will be done, Lord. It seems like your will is to, I don't understand. I mean, I can say that at a minimum so I don't sound blasphemous, but I just don't understand what the hell this is all about, what's going on. I'm so maxed out. But so yeah, finally at the end of the day, completely frazzled. My nervous system is just like on fire. Dropped off the car, got a rental. Now, because of all of that, I guess spent more time than I probably should have, but it feels good to at least try to express some of this. More time than I should have talking about the lead up to what I wanted to talk about here. But yeah, so, and because of certain spiritual oppression that I'm under, I've shared about in other videos, these etheric implants and that are painful, that are restrictive, that make life very difficult. It's hard to sleep. Something about doing Uber anyways, let me not get into all that. But I'm just in a dark place. I'm in a very dark place, very lonely, dark, not sure where to turn with all of this. Something's got to change. And I keep just seeming to get dragged not just to my knees, but on my knees, dragged across gravel. That's how it feels. And that's a hopeless place to be. It's like total despair, or if not total. I wouldn't want to contemplate what that's like if this is not. Well, I guess I could certainly imagine it being worse, but it's bad. And it's hard to move through the world and function in life when you're so depleted and so much shit. So I've been reaching out. What else can I do? I'm reaching out to God. And part of that for me, I've been in this dialogue with, engagement with, conversation with, I don't know what the right word is, with Jesus and with Christianity. Yeah, I'm willing to suffer. I'm not preempting this. I'm not invoking this, Lord. Please do not mistake what I'm saying here. But if I know it's the truth, and I know it's aligned, and I know it's right, it's not that I want to suffer, but if it's God's will, in other words, if it's not just needless stuff that it's because I'm doing something that I need to figure out and do better, but if I truly am clear on something that it's God's will and entails suffering, that changes the calculation, that reconfigures, reorients how I approach it, and ameliorates, lessens, I guess again, reframes my relationship with that suffering. Because it brings in this redemptive element, or it brings in this, it eliminates the psychological anguish. Because it's like, for whatever reason, I just have to go through this. And yes, I trust in God's providence in this time of trial. But that's not always clear, unfortunately. It's not always clear, is there something that I need to do? And the moment that door is open, even just a crack, you're open to an onslaught of anxiety because you're trying to figure out, how do I manage this? How do I fix this? What do I need to do different? Do I just keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing? And that's what God's calling. It's like that's not an inconsequential or trivial question. And the answer to that especially is not inconsequential or trivial. It's surrender versus gritting it out. And the fact is, I'm so deficient. I mean, I wish that was not the case, but I'm such a corrupt, deficient, weak in some ways. I don't know if I want to say weak because, well, yeah, let's just say deficient, inadequate person. And so it's frightening to think that, you know, because there's just things and capacities that I'm not good at, you know. And so you're just stuck in this kind of horizon of infinite and potentially worsening madness in your life. And you're just a human body. You're just one little human. You've got a nervous system, and then that impacts your sleep, and you can't sleep because you're stressed out. And it's just this cascade of awfulness. I have to say, all this lead up, the kind of central theme here is authenticity for me, integrity as best I can, and truth. And I think truth is an even deeper value for me than something like healing. Healing is what I desperately need. If I could internally get the healing that I need, and I mean that in an almost energetic, I mean, there are psychological things that are connected, and the root actually may be something closer to psychological or spiritual, but the manifestation, the thing that is really dogging me and making life just that much more difficult, unbearable, difficult, let's say, I don't know about unbearable, difficult, are these etheric implants. And I hope, yeah, let me not say too much about that, but my sense is that truth and healing are synonyms or so closely related that it's, I'm not sure I'm ever going to be in a position where I would have to prioritize one over the other. But I think truth probably is the deeper value. And I want to frame the conversation that way because I'm in such a place of desperation for help. My path has been, and what I've mostly talked about on this channel, is something that could be called, now this is an incredibly loaded word, And unless you really engaged with it, it'd be hard for you to hear it in the depth or in the sense that I'm going to use this word, but it's something like non duality, Advaita Vedanta. Now, I've noticed, especially in the Christian context, and maybe I'll try to weave this in at some point, when I hear, to the extent that I hear, I watch a lot of testimonial videos, and I should say I feel very Christian in many ways, very called to Jesus, very, gosh, I've got 20 things I want to just at the same time express. Let me see here. My sense is, some of the testimonial videos, there's a lot of like New Age to Jesus, and a lot of the criticism of New Age I sort of agree with. And I'm not really attracted to a lot of that stuff, like the law of attraction and Course in Miracles, spirit guides, all that stuff. I just don't feel very drawn in that direction. Not that there aren't other dimensions, that's very clear to me. Not that there aren't other spirits, and I mean, I've had interactions, I've had stories, and firsthand experience with a lot of this stuff, but it doesn't feel like the deepest truth to me, and it feels like there's a lot of potential risks that, even though I don't totally see it the way some of these testimonial videos put it, I think there's kind of just a almost intuitive cautiousness, or a that it's not bad, that even if we're arriving at it from a slightly different angle, the conclusion to avoid some of that stuff is not a bad conclusion, to avoid some of that New Age stuff. But sometimes I'll come across, this happened recently, a video that talks about non-duality and how the person was involved in non-duality before they got saved. And it's a straw man often. I think every time I've heard somebody mention it, that the way that they're talking about non-duality is not the deepest dimension of it, or really what I intend when I evoke that. So I'm trying to demarcate or draw some distinctions here. That when the sense I get in the way they describe non-duality in the context of their having been saved and moving away from that, they describe something very conceptual. It's basically, they're saying it's a conceptual framework in which there's no good and no evil. And the point is to, so that duality of good and evil is something that, the way that they interfaced with non-duality, that's their understanding. There's no good and there's no evil. I'm trying to think how else they describe it. The point is to be detached from it, or something like that. Here I am guilty of what I'm about to describe. I don't know exactly. I'd have to rewatch and see exactly how they describe it. But it was basically, they were describing kind of a conceptual worldview or theoretical worldview. And that's not really at all how I'm using that term. Non-duality, in the sense that I'm using it, is experiential. And I would love, 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 love to see a testimonial that, for somebody who had those insights experientially and found that ultimately wanting. But I have not found that. I'm trying not to draw any conclusions from that, but it is interesting that point is interesting to me, and maybe I'll come back to that. But and if it's just a concept that you're mapping on and filtering reality through, who cares? There are going to be shadows to any belief system, and it's like, and some are going to be more conducive of health than others, for sure, but the mind can do whatever it wants with a belief system. that's part of where I'm at with all this. And maybe that'll shift. I don't know. Hold all of this in a open fashion. I'm exploring right now. I'm not closed off. I haven't drawn any firm conclusions. That's part of what I'm trying to express here. But non-duality points you back into the living experiential dimension. It's not primarily or at all really about belief or dogma or concept. It's pointing you into a dimension prior to that discursive level of creation, in where concept maps and thoughts and ideas and words and beliefs, that's like a bandwidth of consciousness, not not like a total illusion or something like that, but it's relatively real, right? And there are layers to creation, and there are deeper layers that are less formal, meaning less solid, less that even that bandwidth of concept, that's already a little bit less solid, has less form than this apparent physical reality. So I mean, there's layers to this whole thing. I've talked a lot about this, but this is not like primarily or at all a conceptual map. These are things to discover in direct experience. That's what I like about it, is again tying it back to this idea of truth being very important. What's true here? But anyways, so non-duality, if I had to pick a word for my path, it would be something like that. Now there'd be another component to it, and non-duality is a recognition of who you fundamentally are. What is it that I corresponds to in direct experience? Not the overlay of a concept, not the concept of what that I is, but actually, I guess phenomenologically, if I'm using that word right, forgive me if not, ontologically, I think phenomenologically, I'll just say experientially, direct experience. What is that? Is there an I there? What does that correspond to? And so it's an inquiry process that brings you closer into a direct contact with what your fundamental, I want to say, it brings you into contact with what reality is. Now, there are questions there about subjectivity versus objectivity, but practically speaking, those aren't very important to me. So you can get caught up in the words, but it's not really about how I'm expressing it. From my perspective, it's not about the words. I'm trying to point out that this is an experiential thing, an insight, a recognition. Not a worldview to adopt. Not that it doesn't have implications, or I don't know. Anyway, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. That's another big question. But and why that matters is you can contact a space of deeper formlessness prior to your suffering. Does that sound significant? Does that sound like that might be an important thing? It's, again, something to be discovered. And so it would be non-duality, and then the kind of other component of it is something like, of the spirituality I've been pursuing, is something like just, and they're not exactly separate, and there's ways in which I can kind of express the unity of it, but another aspect of it, again, language here is imperfect, so hold this lightly, but is shadow work, I guess, or the digesting of the old storehouse of materials that is kind of frozen memories, on a deeper level, frozen energy. It's like these densities that we have in our body. It's almost like knots in our consciousness, just like you'd have knots in your parent body. And through touching the knots and working through them and through contact with them, you can open them up and release them. It's exactly the same, part of me wants to say. And if not, it's such a similar analogy. I see it almost as exactly the same, but happening on a subtler level of your body, but it's the same thing, same process. But even if we don't want to say that, it's a useful metaphor. That's the work, is allowing these constrictions, these knots, these resistances, this frozen material to come up to surface and to be released. And I've been putting my whole life and energy into that because it's an embodied thing and it's experiential. It doesn't rely on my mind and my commitment to a belief. Now, I have to admit, and it is a hard admission in some sense, or I wish this wasn't the case, it has not healed me. Specifically of this affliction I have around some, these etheric objects and many other things. I've confronted a whole lot of spiritual attack in other dimensions. That's all real. And I get into these other dimensions sometimes during the night phase. I've done videos on how I see this, but where I have to fight, we'll just say demons. I mean, that's one way to say it. Unscrupulous, psychopathic, at a minimum, just unhealthy beings that you don't want, that they attack you. That's all a reality. Again, we could say relative reality, but practically it's, this is not something I would choose. At least I don't think so. I would prefer to be in peace, God, I'm hoping this video doesn't cut out. Try to free up some space here. And because I'm just so maxed out and I just keep getting thrown wrench after wrench after wrench and can't get solid footing, dealing with OCD, dealing with a bunch of shit, yeah, you do reach a point of desperation. And so I call out to Jesus. Like the other night, I just was so hurting, lonely, hurting, suffering, anxious, needed to sleep. So I said, Jesus, I give you my life. Come into my heart, come into my heart, come into my heart. I do love Jesus. I just have always felt drawn towards him. And I love many things about Christianity. Embedded in, encoded in, although in slightly different language where I have to do just a little bit of a translation, but not much. So much of the spiritual path that resonates for me, I find expressed in Christianity. So much of it, it gets right. And in the Bible too, there are aspects of the Bible that I find very good. And so I don't feel too much of an issue. See, the thing with non-duality is it takes you to a place beyond any form. Any form. Any form. I don't care what form. But if it has parameters, if it's an idea, if it's a concept, if it's a person, if it's a spirit, whatever, it's beyond that. It's prior to that. It's the ground of being. And so there is just fundamentally there, and it's hard for me to say this, and I may change my mind on some of this. Again, I'm not fixed with all this. This is just where I'm at. There is a fundamental misalignment, in a sense, with Christianity or with any dogma or belief system. And forgive me, dogma is that's a pretty heavy word. Although there's a technical definition of it as well that is not heavy. But Jesus is a form. Now, please don't hear that as a blasphemous statement. I'm just trying to speak, in a simple way. Not trying to say anything controversial here. But there's a tension there of total surrender, which has no object, pure, you could say subjectivity, pure consciousness, no object. And it's something different to surrender to Jesus and to focus on Jesus. Now, there's a way in which you can talk about it that, you know, that Jesus is the door that opens into that, that Jesus is that. You know, even in Christianity, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so there's a way in which you can sort of understand that. It's like you're surrendering to a window into God. I don't know. I know a lot of people see it that way. But when I'm calling out, it's like I'm calling out on a specific being, Jesus Christ. And I feel comfort there. I love Jesus. I love you, Jesus. And I am clear again that there are many layers to creation, and there are some real psychopathic, evil beings. Now, I've had some interactions, seemingly, with some higher order of beings, not as much as I would like, but who just seem to be a blessing and kind of a grace-filled form. And you don't, at least I don't, want to just say, oh, well, that's all just illusion and it's not the absolute truth, so it doesn't matter. It's like, I'm not in this body the absolute truth. I mean, there's a way in which you can say form and emptiness are one. So it gets, you get real twisted up here because there are different things that you could say that at different altitudes of understanding that are true and accurate, but I need help. I need support. Because I'm in this corrupt, even if I don't want to say corrupt, but I'm in this body. This body is you could say a fractal, but it's not the whole picture. And we're kind of in this situation where we struggle and we need help and we need support. Medically, psychologically, spiritually. And so it's not at all a leap for me to, you know, if I'm going to call out and try to get support with whatever here in this dimension, it just makes sense. You know, if there is a King of Kings, a higher being of grace and goodness, yeah, I'm going to call out to him. I'm going to call out for that support, and I'm going to love him. And when I do call out, I feel great. I felt comforted. I felt held, and I was able to get to sleep. And so I move in that direction. I've been going to church. I've stopped doing that the past couple of weeks. But I hit this confrontation, this barrier that is not resolvable. And it bumps up against this thing inside of me, this value I have around truth and healing. It's not like I'm out there wanting to collect gurus, collect teachers, collect Jesus in this sense. That's not it's because I'm suffering. It's because this world is a mess. I am a mess, and trying to live a life where I'm not just addicted and destroying my body, destroying my mind, which is where suffering often leads us, but I'm trying to transmute, I'm trying to heal, I'm trying to surrender to the highest, I'm trying to surrender to God. And trying, again, here's not exactly the right word, I am, you know, doing that, you know, just letting go, letting go, letting go. But when you keep getting pummeled, you have to, let me see, what am I trying to say here? So I did a deliverance last night. I reached out to somebody who does deliverance prayer. And I go into this mode, or I guess suffering and ongoing suffering, and you get to a point of such desperation that's like, I know what the Christian walk is. I know that it asks me to believe a number of things, I have to be honest and say I don't. I just don't. You know, when I go I've been going to this Catholic church a lot, and we say the Apostles' Creed, or maybe it's the Nicene, I can't remember which. But it's basically just, it's a creed. It's a list of dogmas, again, not in the pejorative sense here, but just axiomatic, or creedal statements of belief. For whatever reason, I do believe in Jesus, and I do believe he existed. I do believe he probably, I mean, again, here, to be totally scrupulous, totally honest, I don't know what, if any, of what's in the New Testaments is real or is accurate or is true. I don't know. I have to admit that. Do I sense a lot of truth there? Yes, I do. Do I sense Jesus is the truth? Yes, I do. Do I love him? Yes, I do. Do I call on him? Yes. Am I calling on him now? Yes, absolutely. Why not? I love him. But Mary, having conceived Jesus through the Holy Ghost, through the Holy Spirit, that she was a virgin, if I'm Catholic, that she was perpetually a virgin. Let's start with that this was an immaculate conception. At a minimum, I have to say, I don't know. How could I possibly know? I mean, it's attested to, I think, in 2 of the Gospels. But that's such a huge claim that that I feel conflict around that. It's like, if I am to go around preaching the good word, which is part of the Christian walk, is to share the good news, and yet I'm not really convicted on a lot of stuff. I don't know, maybe I'm being overly scrupulous, and that is something I do with my OCD. But it's like, I hate the feeling of being phony. I could just say, I take it on faith that it's true. But if somebody were to press me on that, how do you know it's true? I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be blasphemous here. I just have to trust that the God of the universe is okay with me being honest. I have to trust that. And I'm 100% willing to have a radical transformative experience in which it is made clear to me, that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. Totally open to that. In fact, that would simplify things. I would love to have that clarity and that conviction in a way that did not feel phony, did not feel like I was faking it. Fact is, I've been in other worldviews, I'll use this word ideology, and I don't really want to say that's what Christianity is, but I've certainly been in other ideologies that were totalizing, and there was some truth in it, but a lot of it was me trying to fake it till I made it. I didn't have true conviction, and that left me feeling very empty inside and phony, and I don't want to do that. I can't. I don't think I can do that. That's part of what I'm struggling with. I'm not even sure I can do that. And that's part of what's the draw to me about doing this energetic digestive work to heal the splits within me, and this non-duality inquiry process pointing into, the depth layers of creation, and that most of what I try to share are things that I have direct experience with, and that feels more honest to me, more authentic to me. If I were to start preaching Christianity, there's just so many things that are definitely true that I could say, and I do talk about those. But every jot and tittle, this idea that the Bible is inerrant, I don't know. I mean, I'm attracted to the Bible. I can say the only book I've had for the last 7 or 8 years is the Bible. As crazy as that may sound, I don't know. I don't read a lot anyways, at this point in my life, because I'm so locked in on trying to heal. But I do read the Bible. And there are times when I've had really profound connections, especially excuse me, with the New Testament. There's like a living truth there. But what's useful about it is that it confirms something experiential for me. And so, anyways, let me see if I can come back to some of that. So, yeah, I'm just like, I could be wrong. I could be wrong with all this. I mean, I don't understand exactly how, because I've tried to be so kind of scrupulous and keeping it within my direct experience, speaking from experience and what I know. I don't see how I could really falsify that stuff because these are experiences. It's not like at least not primarily, or thought. This is not thought based or concept based. There are certain concepts that help to express it in a way, but anyways. But yeah, I'm desperate enough that I keep saying. Part of what I keep saying is, Lord, show me the way. I feel very aligned saying something like that. I will do whatever you ask me. If I have conviction that's coming from the highest, that it's aligned, that it's true, that's the direction to move in, that's going to be healing, and is your will, I will do it. I'm insane enough, crazy enough, surrendered enough. I'll just do it, you know? But I need that clarity. I need to speak to you. I need to hear from you. And that's not primarily going to come just by having somebody share their concepts with me. That just doesn't speak to me. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. But yeah, so I do call out to Jesus, and sometimes I call out and then I get sleep, and then I'm able to do some healing, removing some of these objects. And I've had some other experiences that are very Jesus centered, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to that. There's something here. I'm going to pursue that. I'm going to listen to that. I'm not going to be like a non-dual purist or something. No, not at all. That can be dogmatic and unhealthy in its own way. But I'm trying to keep it practical. And for me, what practical means is healing. I am suffering. I want healing. But I could say exorcism. I guess that's another word for deliverance. It's a Catholic approach to it. But so this deliverance, part of the entrance into something like this is they ask you to just express, confirm, confess a number of Christian beliefs, and because I am so desperate, have been so desperate, I just did it. Not because I'm a phony, but because I have in my mind the thought of, I could maybe anything is possible. There's so much about this path that makes zero sense. These objects in my body makes zero sense. The depths of hell and creation and all these other dimensions and the complexity of the created order, I don't pretend to have even a fraction of a total understanding of it. I have my experiences, and I've been able to piece together a semi-coherent map, but I'm not holding on to that with any kind of rigidity, because there's just so much there, and mystery there, and so much that I don't understand. And ways to interpret the experiences. Anyways, and so my spirit going into this is like, I'm going to do anything to heal. And that's really the master key for me, is truth, healing. However, for them, and I did express it to them, they said, okay, people want the deliverance, but they don't want the deliverer. Do you want Jesus Christ? Will you confess Jesus Christ, that he died for you, that you believe in Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that you have no other gods, you have no other practices, Jesus and Jesus only. I don't know, and they tie it, and it can be frightening territory because it's all tied into the eternality of your soul, heaven and hell, and all these things. And I don't think those are totally wrong. See, I'm not saying that there is no heaven or hell. I'm certainly not saying that. I have had direct experiences, especially of hell, more horrifying than, well, I don't even want to get into that. But so I'm not saying this map of theirs is totally wrong, not at all. There's a lot that I agree with, but I I I, I can't say that I had that. Yeah, she was asking that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, all this stuff, and I just said, yeah.